Okay, some more stuff with quadratic equations and such. What I just wrote down was standard quadratic form. Okay, we're going to learn how to put that into vertex form. Y equals a parenthesis x minus h squared plus k. And at first you look at it and you say, well, I don't see an h, I don't see a k. It's just a rearrangement. Okay. Now, how we're going to do this is a process called completing the square. Okay, you already know how to put it into vertex form for a reason, but now we're going to take it and we're going to solve it by completing the square. Okay, so let's give you an example. Let's say we have t squared plus 14t. We'll say minus 51 equals 0. Okay, so if we wanted to put this simply into vertex form, we could do it like this. Well, for right now, let's just set that equal to y. And we'll solve that out in just a second, okay? So I'm going to say, step 1, let's add 51, right? Balance your c. So if I have y plus 51 equals t squared plus 14t, okay? Step 2, wasn't it divide by a? Well, in this case, my a value is 1. So I could divide by a all day long. It really doesn't matter, right? Step 3, take half of my b value. Now, you would have written notes like this. Half of my b value, right? Half of that squared, add to both sides. Well, half of 14 is 7. 7 squared is 49, and I add 49 to both sides. Okay? We then would have said, why don't we take that trinomial, and make that into a binomial squared? Okay? And I would have said, do this. Always take your value, drop it right there. A lot of times it's an x, okay? Always take this sign, put it right there. Always take the square root of my new c value, which is definitely 7, okay? Then I square it. I always take my original a value. Well, my original a value was just 1. And I multiply this side by the original a value. Now this one just worked out really nice, didn't it? Well, 51 plus 49, isn't that 100? Let's see. Yeah, I think it is. So if I have y plus 100, I'm going to minus 100 over. Okay? And I'm done. I have that in vertex form. It really is not that bad. It just takes practice to get used to it. Okay? So why don't we just double check the math to make sure? Okay. Now, if I were to say, well, we'll double check the math first. Binomial squared. Square the first. The product is 7 times t. Let's double it, right? And I square the last. I minus 100, and I get t squared plus 14t. Was it minus 51? It worked. Same math. We just did backwards. Okay? Now, if I said, what's the vertex of this? Okay, if I said, what's the vertex? We would say, opposite, same. So if I said negative 7, negative 700, I'm sorry, negative 7, negative 100, that's the vertex. And it would drop way down here, right? Why don't we just say the scale is like by, I don't know, 20s. Negative 20, negative 40, negative 60. Okay, you get the idea? Okay. Now we're going to see what else we can find. Our y-intercept was negative 51. Negative 20, negative 40. Right about there. Now what we have to see now are our roots, right? So it's not that bad. Once we have it in this format right here, we can just set y to 0. Let's see what happens. If y is 0, wouldn't that give us the places on the x-axis it hits? So if y was 0, here we go. Let's add 100. Make sense? Now we're going to solve for t. So I am going to divide by my a. Well, nothing changed. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Do not forget plus or minus. Okay? Now to make this easier, I'm just going to put this over here, okay? So I have plus or minus root 100. I'm going to take this and put it right here. Okay? I'm going to minus 7 from both sides. What is the square root of 100? Isn't that 10? So now when I actually do the math out, I get negative 7 plus 10, which I think is, what's that, a 3? And I do negative 7 minus 10, which I think is a negative 17. Okay, we did it. Those are the roots. So if I put a dot at 1, 2, 3, and negative 17, let's just count over and pretend that was it. Oop, pretend that was it right there, just so it fits on the graph. Negative 17, positive 3, y-intercept of negative 51, and vertex of negative 7, negative 100. You just graphed your problem. Okay? Now I can make this obviously a lot simpler. I just wanted to show you how everything works, but we'll do a couple more. Okay? As a matter of fact, I will do that exact one just a little bit quicker now if I just wanted to solve for it. So what if we said t squared plus 14t minus 51 was equal to 0? Okay, now you saw how to do all that work, and right now I'm just going to say, let's solve for the zeros. Well, instead of having y, we just put 0. Okay, I'm going to add 51 to both sides. Okay, I'm going to divide by my a. Well, a is 1, so who cares? Half of b, right? Isn't that 7? 7 squared is 49, isn't it? Add that to both sides. Okay? We're going to make this trinomial into a binomial squared. Okay, do you see how quickly we get to the same thing? We're just looking at it a different way. When I square root both sides, don't I get plus or minus? We're done. Okay? Do a couple more like that. Okay, if you're following along on the worksheet, I'm doing number 4 right now. Let's say the whole goal was to solve that right there. Okay? I am going to minus 11. Divide by my a. No, there is no a. Half of b. Well, half of negative 12 is what? At negative 6, and I square it and I get 36. Okay? Parentheses. Take that little bucket, drop it down. That sign, drop down. What's the square root of 36? I think it's 6. And I'm ready to go. Square root both sides. Square root of 25, right? Plus or minus 5. I add 6. 6 plus 5 is 11. 6 take away 5 is 1. We're done. Okay, do another one. Let's say we have x squared plus 6x plus 8. Okay, now this one you could have solved by factoring. You could say 4 times 2 is 8, 4 plus 2 is 6. Let me just do it this way real quick though, okay? And then I'll show you some that you cannot factor. Step 1, balance your c. So I get x squared plus 6x equals negative 8. Divide by a. Now there is no a. Take half of 6, right? That's 3. 3 squared is 9. Add 9 to both sides. Take the square root of 9, right? And now you're looking, you're like, well, this seems too easy. Well, it is. Just square root both sides. Do not forget plus or minus. What's the square root of 1, right? So you get plus or minus 1. And I think I just have to, remember that canceled out, minus 3. Let's do the math out. Okay, I'm sorry, I meant to put minus 3. Sorry. What's negative 3 plus 1? Isn't it negative 2? What's negative 3 minus 1? Isn't it negative 4? You just solve for the roots. Okay, so if you were graphing this already, look what you have. Y-intercept of 8, let's call that 8. Roots of negative 2, negative 4. And then you just do the vertex, and you're good. Okay? But right now we're just solving. Now I'm going to jump and do kind of a scarier one here in a second. How about we do this one? This one's going to look terrible. on the worksheet is number 8. Okay? Number 8. It says k squared minus 12k plus 23 equals 0. So k squared minus 12k plus 23 equals 0. And obviously I want to solve for k, and I want them in exact form. Okay? Now sometimes you can't factor. You can't factor these. Okay? So we're just, get it? Okay. We're going to just follow the steps and everything's going to be fine. Step 1. Balance your C. Got it. Step 2. Divide by A. Well, there is no A. It's 1. So who cares? Step 3. Half of B squared add to both sides. Well, half of 12, negative 12 is negative 6, right? Well, 36. I add that to both sides. Okay. Now you get to that point, we're going to take this and make it into a binomial squared. Boom, boom. Take down that letter. Whatever that sign is, the square root of that, and we're almost there. And this was a tough one. Okay, so I'm going to square root both sides. Don't forget that's a plus or minus. Now I have plus or minus root 13, and if this cancels out, I just had 6. Well, I'm done. And that was a tough one. Okay, now I could write that as 6 plus root 13, and I could write that as 6 minus root 13, and we don't care about the decimals right now. Those are just the two answers that solve that quadratic. Okay. Now sometimes I put these answers in braces, but they're not parentheses because that indicates an ordered pair. Okay, I'm going to keep going for a second. Okay. Let's try another one. Let's try number 9. So if you're on that worksheet, number 9, here we go. So it says r squared minus 4r minus 91 equals 7. Now clearly they're just trying to be mean to you here, right? They put 91, they put a 7 on the other side. Let's see what we have to do though. I want balance my C. What is that? If I add 91, don't I get 98? Well, we're all set to go. Okay? Divide by A. I don't have to. What's half of negative 4? Negative 2, right? And I square it and I get 4. And I add that to both sides. Doing good, right? So we're going to take that trinomial and make it to a binomial squared. Boom, boom. R. Take that sign. Square root of 4 is 2. See how close we are to being done already? Square root both sides. Do not forget the plus or minus. Canceled out. I'm going to add 2. We're done. 2 plus root 102, 2 minus root 102. And what we're doing again is solving a quadratic equation by means of completing the square. Okay? Might as well do a couple more. I know you're having fun. Okay, here we go. Let's try number 10. Number 10 on the worksheet looks like this. X squared minus 10x plus 26 equals 8. And let's go. I'm going to minus 26. What does that give me? 8 take away 26, what's that? Negative 18. So now I have x squared minus 10x equals negative 18. And ready? Divide by a. Well, a is 1. Who cares? Half of negative 10 is negative 5 squared is 25, right? So that give me 7. Okay? Boom, boom. X minus square root 5 squared, square root, plus or minus. Plus or minus root 7, add 5 over, x equals done. Okay? After a while, you'll see it just doesn't matter what the numbers are. We can make it very easy. For right now, I'm not going to deal with a coefficient other than that. Well, I guess I might as well. I'm already here. Let's do 2 more, then we'll call it good, okay? Let's do number 11 real quick. So if I get k squared minus 4k plus 1 equals negative 5. Minus 1 minus 1. Now if I get k squared minus 4k equals negative 6, right now I recognize something's different. We're going to have a radical that has a negative value. Remember that rule? The square root of negative 1 is I? I think that's going to come up in a minute, but we'll find out. So I'm looking at this real quick, and I'm ready to go. So I divide by 1. Who cares? I take half of my b value. Well,